The year is 3200, and you are the sole survivor of an expedition from Earth to the planet Manzion. After the destruction of your spacecraft and your crew by robots, you find yourself trapped in an electrified maze, stalked by the robots which so cruelly butchered your friends. Armed only with your laser gun, you run from maze to maze, again and again fighting scores of mechanical monsters, clinging onto your last shred of hope that perhaps you will make it out of here. Perhaps you will see the silken green of Earth again. Perhaps you will feel the breath of soft air upon your face just one last time. And then a big smiley face kills you. That is Bezerk in a nutshell. Apart from all the other things about it. Well, alright, that's just the story as explained in the console versions of the game. Bezerk was first seen in arcades in 1980, the creation of Stern Electronics, designed by Alan McNeil. Supposedly, McNeil had a dream one night about a game where a player is pitted against robots. This would be the seed from which Bezerk would grow. The title of the game would come from the science fiction novel series Bezerker by Fred Saberhagen, a series of stories in which self-replicating robots take over the Earth, attempting to destroy all organic life. The game was initially created to be in black and white. However, when the beautiful full-colour Defender was released in 1981, Stern switched to a colour monitor. Since Bezerk was released before Defender, I can assume that there do exist in the world some black and white Bezerk cabinets that didn't get the upgrade. Or Defender, being the reason for Bezerk being in colour, is just another one of those rumours that sticks. And as we will find out in this video, rumours really do stick. The Bezerk cabinet really was something special. Gorgeous design, great sound effects, and using revolutionary technology to actually speak to the player.
Humanoid, intruder.
Now that is a sexy voice. One for the old wank bank there? What? One of the more famous parts of the Bezerk game is Evil Otto, a terrifying, smiling face which will appear to terminate you without warning. In the game, if you get shot by these robots or you walk into the walls, it's an insta-kill. But even get brushed by this lad and you are done.
Humanoid, intruder.
Named after one of creator McNeil's former colleagues who would smile while telling you off, Evil Otto will start moving very quickly once you've managed to get all of the robots off the screen. And since he's invincible, all you can do is hope that you avoid him. You can see why, despite his simplistic appearance, why such a character keeps appearing in lists of the most terrifying video game characters ever made. Good old BuzzFeed and your lists. Do they literally do anything else? Bezerk has got to be one of those classic arcade games, and by extension, one of the most remembered home console games back when the Atari 2600 first appeared in homes. Bezerk was also released for the Atari 5200 and the Vectrex, but this is the one that I've got and this is the console that I have, so we just have to work with what we've got here. Because of that 360-degree sort of gameplay, it lends itself well to the Atari joystick. Although I'll be honest, I wish I was playing with the original Atari joystick. Look at this thing, I can't get over it. It's the only Atari controller that I have, but it looks like a shoe. I mean, how am I supposed to hold this thing? Sat here playing a classic arcade port with a friggin' slipper. This is one of my favourite games on the console. I think it's a really great port. But given the original game is already really good, it'd be kinda hard to mess this up. Even on the Atari 2600, Evil Otto is sure to instill terror into your heart. A smiling killer. Seriously, every time he appears, I feel like my heart's gonna jump out of my chest. Did I just kill him? F***ing A! Well, yeah, alright. Another reason why I wanted to talk about this Bezerk version is that this is the only version in which you can actually kill Otto. Even in planned Atari 8-bit games, which I understand were ports of the 5200 version, you weren't going to be able to kill him. But in this version, this most basic of ports, you can kill this grin-faced bastard. I mean, you don't kill him as such, he comes back in like 3 seconds. It's a temporary kill. He's like a simpering Jesus. This is something you can do thanks to the Game Select switch on your Atari. Bit of a power move on your part, feels pretty good. But let's get to the meat of the matter. There's some truly dark stuff about this game, something that sets it apart from other arcade games, something haunting and worrisome. According to a persistent urban legend, the arcade game Bezerk actually killed people. I couldn't find exactly when the rumour started, but for decades there's been whispers that the arcade cabinet killed at least 2 people, and not by falling on them. It was the game itself, and I suppose Evil Otto, at fault. Supposedly, 2 young men were claimed by this grinning face. The first victim I'm going to talk about is one Peter Bukowski. The October 1982 publication of Video Games magazine fully documents the Peter Bukowski incident, and it's the most complete account that I could find. The Chicago Tribune also did report it in April 27th, 1982, but their archive is behind a paywall, so screw that. According to the article, Bukowski walked into Friar Tuck's game room in Illinois, completely sober, at about 8:30 in the evening. Making a beeline for the Bezerk cabinet, Bukowski played so well that in 15 minutes he put his initials in the top 10 scores at least twice. Obviously talented when it came to gaming, the intense nature of the title would perhaps be his undoing. Bored of the game, he dropped a quarter into another machine a few steps away and collapsed. He was announced dead at 9 PM. Cause of death? A heart attack. An autopsy revealed that Bukowski actually had scar tissue on his heart, clearly indicative of underlying heart problems. Was the high-stress gameplay of Bezerk just enough to push his heart over the edge? At only 18 years old, Bukowski's death was certainly a tragic one. And who could have possibly foreseen his pixel-perfect killer? There is a second casualty mentioned in the urban legend, by the name of Jeff Daly, who also played the game in Chicago, Illinois, although depending on who you hear it from, he might have copped it in Friar Tuck's arcade, or in a different one entirely. Now, many recountings of this particular part of the legend say that Daly was around the same age as Bukowski and in fact was actually one of his acquaintances. Plus, he died just months before Bukowski did. Jeff Daly would also die of a heart attack, and according to the legend, he was actually playing Bezerk when he had it, and when he fell to the floor dead, onlookers raised their eyes to the screen of the arcade cabinet to see that Daly's ending score was 16660, prominently showing the number of the beast lit up on the screen. This number of the beast story is the one that I heard when I was little, and yeah, it did freak me out. But is an arcade cabinet really capable of killing 2 young men in their prime? There's no doubt that playing video games can increase our blood pressure. In the late 70s, cardiologist Robert S. Elliott at University of Nebraska Medical Center started to monitor Pong players while they were playing the game. He found that the heart rate can increase up to 60 beats per minute and blood pressure top at 220 within just a minute of playing, although the players themselves are none the wiser. Now, with this urban legend, the first thing of note is that information about the death of the guy that I just talked about, Jeff Daly, with his number of the beast final score, is very hard to find. Any information that I got online was purely anecdotal and very much a story passed on, rather than with any actual source. There's a fair few articles online that mention Jeff Daly as being the first ever video game death, but with zero evidence to back that up, and usually within an article wherein the writer is actually recounting the details of Peter Bukowski's death. The fact that the death happened reportedly in the same year and to someone around the same age as Bukowski is suspect. And that the legend also states that him and Bukowski were friends is just a bit too convenient. Also, unless you're a bit of a nut, you're not going to believe that the high score just happened to include 666 bang in the middle. And even if it did, surely Christianity's devil would want to do something a bit more, I don't know, obvious than leaving the mark of the beast in a dead teenager's high score? In any case, in the Bible the number of the beast concerns some mad lad monster that crawls out of the ocean and starts kicking off. I don't know how relevant that is to Bezerk. Mind you, I would have loved to seen that in an arcade in the 80s. Anyway, the only recorded deaths of any Jeff Dalys of that age, around the same time and in the same kind of location, are of one Jeff Daly who tragically died in a car accident. So I'm pretty confident to say that the Jeff Daly who died while playing Bezerk and getting a satanic high score didn't actually exist. And the rumour about his existence was probably birthed shortly after the time that Bukowski actually did die. Now, while some details of the story I probably won't ever be able to iron out, it's quite clear that while no Jeff Daly was killed by Bezerk, Peter Bukowski did indeed die on that day in Friar Tuck's after playing arcade games. The death really was reported, and there really are coroner's reports about it. Interviews also exist with the owner of the Friar Tuck's arcade, recounting the death. Although he didn't die while actually playing the game, it is kind of creepy to think that Evil Otto actually exasperated his heart to the point where it killed him. Whether or not you think this guy was a victim of Evil Otto is really down to your imagination, but the fact that he'd already left the arcade cabinet before he died suggests there probably wasn't anything supernatural at work here. He was just a very poorly kid. However, the plot thickens. Speaking to Retro Gamer magazine, issue 47 in 2008, creator Alan McNeil asserts that only one player died while he was playing the game. Apparently, the person in question was obese, and his heart gave out after having to run up some stairs to get to the machine. Now, Peter Bukowski, by all accounts, was not actually overweight, and the coroner's report, as I already said, did actually state there was scar tissue on his heart. We've already talked about how Jeff Daly appears to be entirely made up. So who on earth is this third guy that Alan McNeil is talking about? Well, I have no idea. Perhaps this is the part of the urban legend that McNeil had heard. Perhaps he had no clue that Bukowski actually died after playing the game. But whether this is a third person he's referring to seems unlikely. There's no record of an overweight fella dying while playing Bezerk that I could find. There was one other death at Friar Tuck's game room that was reported by the Chicago Tribune in 1988. Juan Pedro Roberts stabbed a fellow teenager, Edward Clark Jr., outside the games room, supposedly over the ownership of quarters used to play the arcades. There's no mention of Bezerk in this article, but it being the same place where Bukowski had died years earlier suggests that perhaps this perpetuated the urban legend of a killer arcade machine. I spent a long time researching this video and I still don't feel I've scratched the surface. Maybe you'd like to go down this rabbit hole and see what you can find. It's actually pretty interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if the legend of Polybius actually spawned from these killer arcade machines. Polybius, if you don't know, is a load of arcade data that was actually found for an arcade machine that apparently has never existed. But then there's the story that when it did exist, it killed people. God, arcade machines are bloodthirsty. Ah! Since the Bezerk deaths, or more accurately, the single Bezerk death that wasn't really a Bezerk death, there have been a number of video game related fatalities, although none that I could find were ever attributed to Bezerk ever again. In 2012, 23-year-old Chen Rongyu died during a power nap he was taking after a 23-hour gaming session of online multiplayer title League of Legends. In the same year, Diablo 3 claimed the life of Trang Cheng Feng after 10 hours of solid gaming. The 19-year-old broke his long streak to get up and get some fresh air, only to collapse and be pronounced dead at the scene. There have been plenty more deaths till now which involve video games, and I may make a video on them at some point, but until then, Bezerk remains steeped in mystery and darkness, the first killer. So next time you see that gorgeous cabinet set up in an arcade, do you really want to take that risk? Just in case Evil Otto makes me his next victim, I think I might just play something a little bit more calming. Like Animal Crossing on my DS. Yeah, that was fun. I'm hungry. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, then why not subscribe? It helps me out a lot. Or you could come and say hi on Twitter or Facebook.